Checking out a PS3 shelf in 2026 reveals the usual major releases gathering dust. Dig underneath those plastic cases, though, and there's a giant pile of RPGs experimenting with pretty unusual narrative formats or highly particular combat loops. We are looking at a stack of these titles today. Some are heavily obscure, others are familiar names running on hardware from a couple of generations ago. Whether booting up the actual console or running an emulator on a modern rig, here is an observation of what actually sits on those discs. Fights rely strictly on a rhythm of passing turns. You knock down a shadow using an elemental weakness, pass the baton to a teammate, and clear the room with a synchronized attack. Playing the vanilla PS3 disc of Persona 5 right now functions like digging into an unedited director's cut. There is none of the extra content from later re-releases, only the raw calendar system. The routine forces a strict daily schedule of attending high school classes, managing relationships, and then running supernatural heist operations at night. Between the dungeon crawling, the menus are aggressively stylized with sharp red angles and giant fonts. Even locked at a lower resolution on this hardware, the visual identity is overwhelmingly loud and entirely cohesive. You are primarily fighting manipulative authority figures, negotiating with shadows to hand over yen or join the roster, instead of mindlessly attacking them until their health depletes.
Help us save my mom.
If you could free Alicia, it might be—
The overworld map features a sweeping orchestral soundtrack layered over walking trees and strange monarchs, all drawn exactly like a Studio Ghibli animation film. Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, primarily centers around a child attempting to process the sudden death of his mother by navigating this parallel reality. Fights happen in real time, but require constant tactical menu navigation to swap out captured creatures. The entire loop revolves around collecting familiars, feeding them treats to alter their stats, and matching their elemental affinities against particular enemies. One of the strangest localization choices, giving a tiny lantern-nosed fairy a thick, highly energetic Welsh accent, somehow grounds the entire fantasy setting, or at least renders the exposition vastly more entertaining. A massive quirk here is the physical Wizard's Companion book you scroll through in-game to decipher runes and cast spells, functioning like an interactive manual built straight into the menu, which genuinely makes you feel like a student learning magic from scratch. Importing a chaotic save file from the previous game is a bizarre series quirk. NPCs will randomly ambush the squad or send angry messages based on extremely minor decisions made on a different disk entirely. This leaves the galaxy feeling petty. Mass Effect 2 treats squad loyalty as a strict survival requirement. Earning the trust of a highly dysfunctional crew of mercenaries, rogue scientists, and assassins is the primary mechanical loop here. You spend hours navigating their psychological baggage purely to ensure they do not immediately die during the final cinematic sequence. The moment-to-moment action is strict cover-based shooting mixed with biotic physics. You strip a mercenary's armor, float them mid-air, and push forward through the corridors. A crucial gameplay loop involves scanning planets for minerals to manually upgrade the ship's armor and shielding, which directly impacts who actually survives the perilous jump through the Omega-4 relay.
A leading arms traffic terrorist organization.
The shooting mechanics and stealth AI are undeniably rough. Enemies frequently ignore point-blank noise or walk into walls. But the technical roughness feels entirely secondary when the mission structure branches this aggressively. Alpha Protocol places extreme emphasis on narrative reactivity, Dialogue timers force split-second decisions during espionage interrogations, and picking an angry response might unlock a black market weapon or result in a key informant dying off-screen. Michael Thornton is a covert operative, but his highly adaptable skill set and moral boundaries are determined entirely by frantic conversation choices. A modern playthrough exposes a system where armed confrontations can be completely avoided merely by finding the right email in a previous building and using it as blackmail leverage. The entire spy thriller adapts to your particular brand of chaos, shifting allegiances based on whether you executed a target or let them go in exchange for classified dossier intel.
Why don't you show yourself?
Throwing this onto a portable setup completely elevates the entire loop. Short bursts of grid combat, followed by rapid-fire interrogation scenes. You manage a squad of psychic soldiers during tactical turn-based fights, but the actual center is pure paranoia. Lost Dimension randomizes a traitor on every single run, which means pulling up a wiki does absolutely nothing to save anyone. Finishing a map requires someone to be exiled based on text log clues and social deduction. Sometimes the most effective healer in the loadout gets exiled simply because they acted slightly suspicious during a dialogue sequence, which is extremely frustrating but also sort of brilliant. The maps involve standard positioning, but equipping different material like fragments allows you to completely alter a character's skill tree mid-run. The sheer chaos of losing key attackers constantly forces drastic strategy shifts, making the social deduction just as critical as the grid movement. Totori revolves around an aggressively strict in-game calendar. Every time an ingredient is gathered or a map is crossed, days disappear. You are managing time constantly. Synthesizing items means balancing material quality and elemental traits to unlock better gear, but only Totori is allowed to use the crafted explosives in battle. This makes laboratory preparation infinitely more important than racking up character levels in the field. Loading Atelier Totori, the Adventurer of Arland, onto a modern handheld screen, or treating it as a weekend puzzle session, highlights exactly why spreadsheet-heavy scheduling works so well in short bursts. The objective is merely passing an alchemy exam and looking for a missing mother, keeping the stakes entirely personal. Encounters use basic turn cues, requiring you to carefully position the two party members to shield the alchemist while she lobs highly volatile custom-crafted bombs at local wildlife.
What's going on? What? Not good.
Who the hell are you?
I don't have time to explain. Leave now and I may spare you from any bodily harm.
Like hell?
Mila Maxwell. So, who's next? Who's next? Flames come forth. Fireball! Far too easy.
The map opens up drastically compared to the previous entry. Instead of taking a train between field studies, travel involves boarding an airship or riding a heavily customized motorcycle across dirt roads. A major obsessive quirk of this franchise is how every single background NPC updates their routine and dialogue after even the minor story events, establishing a world that reads as meticulously documented, almost too documented. Fights rely on the overdrive system, which links characters together to execute continuous attacks without enemy interruption. Spells target geometric zones on the grid, making spatial positioning equally as critical as manipulating the turn order. Trails of Cold Steel 2 strands the protagonist on a frozen mountain, completely isolated from the military academy, and expects the player to immediately start tracking down scattered classmates. The combat relies heavily on equipping quartz to modify stats, turning each student into a highly focused tactical unit before you send them back out into the snow. The kingdom of Boletaria is structurally hostile, mostly silent, blanketed in thick fog, and filled with enemies placed exactly in blind spots. There is no background music during regular exploration. The lighting is dim, the textures are rough, and forward progress relies entirely on memorizing attack animations. Demon Souls uses a stamina meter to dictate every single action. Swinging a halberd, rolling backward, or raising a shield drains the bar, meaning thoughtless button mashing immediately results in a death screen. Booting this up on private fan servers today restores the strange asynchronous multiplayer ecosystem, populating the floors with bloodstains from dead players and cryptic warning messages scratched into the stone. You are mostly wandering a ruined land collecting boss souls to forge obscure weapons, constantly managing character tendency, which shifts the world from light to dark based on whether you defeated an invader or fell off a random cliff.
Longer exist. The future.
Approaching Final Fantasy XIII today, completely separated from the lofty expectations it had at launch, reveals a structure that plays more like a highly concentrated rhythm game than a traditional sprawling adventure. There are no expansive towns to wander around in for the first 30 hours. It is a straight line through these crystal environments. Combat is built on the paradigm shift system, meaning selecting individual attacks takes a back seat to instantaneously swapping the entire party's job classes mid-fight to manipulate a stagger meter. You switch from triple medics to pure magic damage in a fraction of a second, a system requiring actual reflexes. A modern trick is setting the battle speed to slow in the options if the constant class swapping becomes visually overwhelming. The dialogue centers on a group of fugitives who actively distrust each other, creating a very tense environment while sprinting down those metallic sci-fi corridors. The PS3 library holds an absurd variety of structural experiments, managing strict calendars, surviving hostile fog, or dealing with highly unstable squad mates. If there is a particular disc sitting on your shelf that requires attention, drop a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and consider subscribing for more. We really appreciate you watching. Take care.